It happened on a Tuesday, the kind of afternoon that made the city shimmer, soft sunlight dripping between buildings, the air warm but not yet heavy. Ava Reynolds had no intention of meeting anyone, much less noticing someone. She was on autopilot, headphones in, grocery list scrolling in her mind, and the week's stress still lingering on her shoulders. She didn't see him coming. A sharp turn around the corner of a cafe and collision. The sudden thud of bodies brushing, a muffled exclamation, and the unmistakable splatter of something warm on her wrist. "Oh, hell, I'm so sorry." His voice was smooth but breathless. Her eyes dropped to the ground. A tall paper cup, its lid half off, coffee pooling into the cracks of the sidewalk. Then her gaze lifted. He was good-looking in that unassuming way. Tousled hair, sun-warmed skin, a tattoo half hidden under the rolled sleeve of his worn grey t-shirt. His expression was apologetic, but his mouth was curled slightly, as if life amused him more than it should. "It's okay," she said, tugging out one earbud. "I wasn't paying attention." "You and me both." He held up both hands. "Guilty." And now caffeinated pavement. She let out a small laugh despite herself. The accident had left a streak of latte foam across her wrist. He noticed too. "Let me get you a napkin," he said, already reaching into his backpack. A napkin appeared, neatly folded. He held it out without touching her, just enough space that she had to meet his eyes. There was something in them, hazel maybe, with a little gold at the center, the kind of gaze that stayed even after you looked away. "Thanks," she murmured, taking the napkin. Their fingers brushed. A jolt, subtle but real. "I'm Noah." He smiled, easy and unrehearsed. "Ava." "Nice to meet you, Ava. Even if I did throw coffee at you." She smiled, and before either of them could speak again, someone called out from the cafe behind them. Noah turned. "That's me. I was picking up an order for someone." He looked back at her, stepping away. "I owe you a replacement coffee." "We'll call it even," she replied. He walked backward for a second, grinning. "You sure?" She hesitated. "Next time, maybe." He tipped his head. "I'll hold you to that." And then he disappeared into the cafe, leaving Ava standing under the sunlight with a damp napkin. A fading smirk on her lips and a sudden curiosity she hadn't felt in a long time. That night, as she passed the corner near her apartment building, music floated into the street. A guitar, gentle, rhythmic. She paused. Noah. He sat on a short stone wall, fingers coaxing notes from a weathered acoustic guitar. There was no tip jar, no audience. Just him and the quiet, and now her. She almost kept walking, but something in the simplicity of it, the way his body swayed slightly with the rhythm, how his eyes stayed closed as he played, froze her. He didn't notice her. Not at first. Not until she shifted her weight and the heel of her boot scraped against the concrete. His eyes opened, met hers. For a heartbeat, neither of them moved. Then he smiled. "You found me again." She raised a brow. "I live around here." "Lucky neighborhood." He paused, resting his hand on the strings. "Want to sit?" Ava looked at the space beside him on the low wall. Her heart beat too loud for the quiet street. Something in her warned against it. Too soon, too much. but her body moved before the thought could catch up. "I'll sit," she said, settling beside him. The music resumed, softer now. He didn't speak, neither did she, and in that silence the notes filled the space between them like warm water, neither rushing nor waiting. When she turned her head to look at him, he was already watching her. Not in a way that demanded anything, just noticing. She glanced away quickly, Harday, but the heat had already bloomed low in her belly. "Play often?" she asked, voice light. "Only when the day calls for it." "And today?" Felt like something was about to happen. Ava swallowed. She didn't know whether to laugh or run, but instead, she said quietly, maybe it already did. The days that followed were warmer, fuller somehow. Ava hadn't expected that a brief collision and an invitation to sit on a stone wall would echo through her routine. But they did. She found herself walking past the same street corner more often, glancing toward it even when she knew he wouldn't be there. Noah didn't appear every day, but when he did, it was like the space around him shifted, more grounded, more alive. He played music like he was telling secrets to the evening air. And when he saw her, he smiled like they were picking up a conversation that never really ended. They spoke in fragments, about music, about the people who walked by and never looked up, about how some silences were heavy and some were safe. One evening, as the sky softened into pink, she brought him a coffee. "You're repaying the one you spilled," she said, offering the cup as he tuned his guitar. He took it with a mock-serious nod, balance restored. Ava sat beside him again, knees nearly touching. He began to play, not anything loud or flashy, just something slow and careful, like a melody made only for her. When he finished, he glanced sideways. "You don't talk much." She gave a small shrug. "Most people talk too much." He chuckled. "Touché." There was a pause. Then he set the guitar asin. "Want to hear something?" She turned to him, curious. "Sure." He tapped his fingers on his thigh, thinking. "You ever notice how most people only listen to lyrics?" "Okay." "But if you really pay attention," he continued, "the pauses, the little silences between chords, those say more." Ava watched him. His voice wasn't trying to impress. It was just honest and oddly comforting. "I don't know what you'll say yet," he added. She blinked. "My silences?" He nodded. "You're always watching, listening, but I can't quite tell what you're holding back." The words hit harder than she expected. Her instinct was to deflect, to joke, to look away, but she didn't. "Maybe I'm not ready to share it yet," she said softly. He leaned back on his hands, considering her answer with a slow smile. "Fair." They didn't speak much after that, and it wasn't awkward. It was one of those rare moments when silence really did feel safe. Later that week, they met again, this time by chance in a small bookstore she liked to escape to. Ava had just tucked a poetry book under her arm when she turned a corner and nearly walked into Noah again. This time, no coffee was sacrificed, just startled looks and matching smile. "Is this becoming a habit?" he teased. "Maybe the city's smaller than it looks. Or maybe we keep orbiting the same places." She laughed quietly. "You into poetry?" He raised his brows. "You just found me in the philosophy section." Of course you read philosophy, she teased. He grinned. You sound surprised. She tilted her head. You seem more instinct than intellect. I'll take that as a compliment. They browsed together, without pressure. He handed her a book about sound and silence. She found one on the psychology of creativity and passed it to him. At the checkout, he bought her poetry book without asking. You can repay me with another coffee, he said, when she protested. That evening, she invited him to walk with her to a quiet overlook just a few blocks from her apartment. The city stretched in front of them, the lights flickering on like stars waking early. Ava leaned against the railing. Noah stood close, not touching her, but close enough to feel the warmth radiating between them. I don't usually do this, she murmured. Do what? Spend this much time with someone I barely know? He didn't respond right away. Then, I don't think we're strangers anymore. She looked up at him. He was watching her again, like he was reading a page in a language he almost understood. Then what are we? She asked, half playfully, half serious. He smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes this time. That's the thing, Ava. I'm not in a rush to define it. She nodded, unsure if the ache in her chest was relief or disappointment. But then, he reached out, slowly, and tucked a strand of hair behind her ear. The gesture was so gentle, so deliberate, it made her breath hitch. I like your silence, he said. It makes room for mine. And with that, he leaned in, just enough for her to feel his breath, to taste the hesitation between them. He didn't kiss her. Not yet. He let the tension hang, thick and unspoken, then stepped back with a half smile that said, soon, but not tonight. And somehow, that restraint was more intimate than anything she'd felt in a long time. The next time Ava saw him, it was raining. A soft drizzle dusted the streets, leaving the pavement slick and reflective. The air filled with the scent of wet earth and something distant and green. She hadn't expected to see Noah out, but there he was, under the narrow awning of an old bookstore, guitar case slung over his shoulder, damp curls plastered to his forehead. He spotted her first. You're really committed to long walks, he said, grinning as she approached with her hood up and her coat clinging to her. You're really committed to playing outside in bad weather, she shot back. Noah shifted the guitar case from one shoulder to the other. Wasn't playing, just walking, thinking. She stopped under the awning beside him. About what? He hesitated, eyes flicking to hers. About how quiet can feel loud, depending on who you miss. Ava didn't know what to say to that. It wasn't a line, not with the way he said it. It was just a truth, one that made her ribs tighten a little. Do you miss someone? She asked. He looked at her for a beat, then shook his head slowly. Not someone. Something. And she understood. Not everything you lose is a person. That night, he invited her over. Not in the way men usually did. There was no implication, no expectation. Just, I made soup and you look cold. Want some? She didn't even hesitate. His apartment was small, lined with bookshelves and old records, and smelled faintly of cedar and lemon. A warm yellow lamp glowed in the corner, casting soft light on the wood floors. He moved easily around the kitchen, barefoot, sleeves rolled up. Ava watched from a stool at the counter, still damp from the rain, but not minding. Something about being there felt unreasonably comfortable, like slipping into a song halfway through and still knowing the melody. He set a bowl in front of her, lentil, thick and steaming. "I cook when I can't write music," Hidag said. "Keeps my hands busy." She took a bite. It was simple but rich, earthy with spice. "I thought musicians just brooded with wine and vinyl," she teased. Noah smirked. "Only when the soup burns." They ate in silence for a while, and she could feel the quiet between them shifting again. Deeper now, more layered. After dinner, he picked up his guitar and sat on the floor, legs crossed. He began to play something soft, almost like a lullaby. The notes were gentle, circular. She sat opposite him, knees drawn up to her chest, watching his fingers move. He didn't look at her when he played. His gaze stayed on the strings, but he knew she was listening. Eventually, the music faded, and he set the guitar aside. "I've been writing something," he said, eyes still lowered. "A song?" He nodded. "You're in it." Ava blinked. "Me?" "Sort of. The way you walk, the way you pause before you speak." He glanced up. "The way your voice gets quieter when you're about to say something honest." Her cheeks warmed. "You notice all that?" Noah leaned back on his hands. "It's hard not to." She didn't know what to say, so she didn't. But she didn't look away. The air between them thickened. He reached for her hand, not suddenly, just a quiet gesture, and let his fingers rest against hers. Not clasping, not pulling, just there. It was the kind of touch that didn't demand anything, and yet it held more meaning than most kisses she'd had in her life. She turned her hand over slowly, let her palm meet his. Noah looked at her then, gaze steady, searching. He leaned in, not urgently, but like it had always been leading here. And this time he kissed her. It wasn't hard or hungry. It was slow, careful, warm. Ava melted into it, letting her fingers slide along his jaw. His lips moved with quiet certainty, like he knew exactly how to kiss her without asking. The kind of kiss that didn't need heat to feel intimate. It just was. When they broke apart, breath shallow and hearts loud, she didn't speak. Neither did he. But they didn't let go of each other. Later, she stood by his window, looking out at the wet street below. He came up behind her, arms sliding gently around her waist. She leaned into him without thinking. "You still cold?" he asked softly. "No," she murmured. "Good." His chin rested on her shoulder, and they stood like that, two silhouettes in the low light, while the rain returned in a whisper against the glass. Ava wasn't sure what they were building. She didn't even know if it would last past the next week. But in that moment, with the quiet of the room, the warmth of his hands, and the aftertaste of his kiss still lingering, she didn't need answers, not yet. The following week felt different. Ava moved through her days with a strange sense of calm, like something inside her had uncoiled. Her body was lighter, her sleep deeper. But underneath the peace, there was something else, an itch of uncertainty, a soft thrum of vulnerability. She and Noah hadn't defined anything. There had been no talk of what it all meant, no promises, no rules. But that didn't stop the quiet ache she felt when she woke up alone in her bed, still smelling traces of him on her skin. And she hadn't seen him since that night. He'd texted, just once. You made the room quieter in a good way. She didn't know how to respond to that, so she didn't. Instead, she called Tessa. They met at a rooftop bar downtown, lit with string lights and soft music. The kind of place where the drinks were overpriced but the views distracted you from that. Tessa was already there, perched on a stool, a cocktail in one hand, and her usual knowing smirk in place. You look like a woman who's had sex with someone and hasn't processed it yet, she said by way of greeting. Ava gave her a flat look. Hello to you too. Tessa waved her off. Come on, spill. Ava hesitated, then slid into the seat beside her. It wasn't like that. Tessa arched a brow. It wasn't sex? It was... Ava trailed off, unsure of the right word. Close, intimate. Ah, feelings. Ava rolled her eyes but didn't deny it. So who is he? Tessa asked, sipping. Mysterious street guitarist, or just very poetic in bed? Ava told her, piece by piece. The rainy night, the music, the soup, the kiss, the way he touched her like silence was sacred. Tessa listened, surprisingly quiet, then said, Sounds like someone worth getting messy for. Ava stared at the ice swirling in her glass. I don't know if I'm ready for messy. Too late, babe. Just then, the bartender approached to clear empty glasses, and Ava's eyes caught on someone behind the bar. Julian. He was leaning against the far counter, talking to a coworker, laughing at something she said. Tall, dark, confident. The kind of man who knew the effect he had on people and didn't mind using it. And he saw Ava. He didn't smile. Not right away. Just tilted his head, studying her like he remembered something interesting. Then, slowly, he made his way over. Tessa leaned in, whispering, Well, he looks like trouble. Hi, Julian said, resting a forearm on the bar in front of Ava. You've been here before. Once or twice, she admitted. Alone, last time. And now I'm not. He grinned, and it was just this side of arrogant. Pity. Tessa choked on a laugh. Ava shot her a glare. Julian's gaze didn't leave Ava. You want another drink? No, thanks. Conversation, then? Ava opened her mouth, ready to say no, but for some reason, the words stalled. Noah hadn't texted again, hadn't called, hadn't followed up. Maybe it really was just a moment, a pause between chords, like he'd said. Maybe there was nothing more to hear. So she let Julian talk. He was easy to listen to, funny, sharp. When he leaned in a little too close, she didn't move away. Not at first. But as the night stretched on and the city lights blurred at the edges, something inside her recoiled. The contrast was too sharp. Julian's charm was performative, polished. It didn't leave room for silence. It drowned it. She excused herself and stepped outside for air. Cool wind curled around her, and the street noise felt strangely soothing. And then, of course, he was there. Noah, standing across the street, guitar case slung over his shoulder again, staring at her with that unreadable expression. He hadn't moved, hadn't called out. He'd just been watching. Ava's heart thudded. She crossed the street slowly, eyes locked on his. "Noah, you looked like you were having a good time," he said, his voice quiet but sharp at the edges. "I wasn't." He looked away, jaw tight. "You don't owe me anything, Ava. I know that." She stepped closer. "Then why does it feel like you're mad?" He let out a breath, somewhere between a laugh and a sigh. "Because I haven't been able to stop thinking about you. And then I see you leaning into some guy like the last week didn't mean anything." "It meant something," she said quickly. "It still does." A long pause. Then, softer. "Then why'd you disappear, sis? You didn't reach out either." Touché. They stood there in silence for a moment. Then he said, "Do you want to come back to mine?" Ava hesitated. Not because she didn't want to, but because she did. Too much. "I don't want to be a break from something," he added, more vulnerable now. "I want to be what you stay for." And with that, the last of her hesitation melted. She nodded. He took her hand, and this time, when their fingers met, there was no pause. No space left between them. Noah's apartment was exactly as she remembered. Warm, quiet, lived in without trying too hard. The same low lamplight filled the space, softening the corners. The rain had stopped, but the air still carried that clean, unsettled scent that came after a storm. Ava stood in the doorway while he locked it behind them. The silence between them now wasn't awkward. It buzzed. Electric. Loaded with all the things they hadn't said outside. All the things that didn't need words anymore. She turned toward him slowly. Her breath caught somewhere between her chest and her throat. He didn't speak, didn't smile. He just looked at her like he was seeing something for the first time. And then he stepped closer. His hand came up to her face, fingers brushing lightly along her jaw, then threading into her hair. Her lips parted, and he kissed her. This time there was no restraint, no caution. It was heat and need and weeks of slow-building tension breaking all at once. Their bodies collided with urgency. Her arms wrapping around his neck, his hands gripping her waist like he was afraid she'd slip away. She didn't. She wanted this, needed this. Noah's lips moved from her mouth to her throat, slow and reverent, and she gasped, nails grazing the back of his neck. He pulled her closer, their bodies aligning like puzzle pieces, fitting together too perfectly to be accidental. "Tell me if I need to stop," he murmured, voice rough against her skin. "You don't," she whispered. And then she was kissing him again, backing him toward the bedroom without thinking. They fumbled a little, pulling off jackets, bumping into the doorframe, breathless laughter between kisses. But it only made it better. Real. Once inside, he didn't rush. He peeled layers away from her like he was unwrapping something precious. Ava watched the way his eyes changed with every inch of skin revealed, darkening, softening, drinking her in. When his shirt came off, she reached out and ran her fingers down his chest, slow and curious. He caught her wrist gently, held her palm flat against his heart. It was a thing. "I haven't done this in a while," he said quietly. She blinked. "Been a while since you've had sex?" "No," he said with a slight smile. "Been a while since I've wanted it to matter." Her heart twisted. She leaned in and kissed him again, softly this time. Then she lay back, pulling him with her. Their bodies found a rhythm quickly, like they already knew each other. Every movement felt intentional. Every kiss, every touch, layered with something deeper than lust. Ava arched into him, lips parted, breath catching on his name. He whispered hers like a promise, over and over, like he needed her to remember it even after the lights were gone. There was no hurry, just heat, connection, craving. And when they finally reached the peak together, tangled in sheets and each other, it wasn't explosive. It was quiet, beautifully, achingly quiet. Later, they lay facing each other in the dark, her fingers tracing lacy circles on his shoulder. "Tell me something real," she said softly. Noah was quiet for a moment. Then, "I was in love once. Thought I'd marry her." Ava blinked but didn't speak. "She left," he continued. "Said she couldn't feel me anymore. Said I was always somewhere else, even when I was right next to her." Ava's hand paused. "Were you?" He nodded once. "I was chasing things that weren't real, trying to prove something to myself through music, through attention. It never filled the silence." She exhaled, her voice a whisper. "And now?" "Now." He met her eyes in the dim light. "You make the silence feel okay." Ava felt something tighten in her chest. She didn't know what this was between them, didn't know what tomorrow would bring. But in this moment, lying in the dim quiet with him beside her, she didn't feel like running. She felt home. But the world had other plans. The knock came in the morning. 3 sharp raps on the door that cut through the calm like a blade. Noah was still half asleep, hair mussed, t-shirt wrinkled. He slipped out of bed, muttering something about the neighbor or a package. Ava stayed where she was, stretching under the covers, skin still tingling from the night before. Then she heard the voice, female, familiar. "I didn't think you'd still be here." Noah didn't respond right away. Ava sat up, her body suddenly cold despite the blankets. She slipped out of bed quietly, pulling on her shirt, and padded to the hallway. The woman was tall, dark hair pulled into a low braid, standing with one hand on her hip, like she belonged there, like she'd stood in that exact doorway 100 times before. She looked past Noah, saw Ava, and smiled. "Well, that explains the silence." Noah turned, his expression pale. "Ava, this is... let me guess." Ava cut in, voice tight. "Harper." The woman tilted her head. "So he has told you about me." Ava felt the sting in her throat before she could stop it. She stepped back. Noah reached out. "Wait. Ava, she just..." "You could have warned me," she said, voice sharp and low. "I didn't know she was coming, I swear." Ava looked between them, at the familiarity in the way Harper leaned against the doorframe, at the discomfort in Noah's face. Whatever this moment was, it had already happened between them before. She was just a new version of an old story. Ava didn't yell, didn't cry. She just turned around, picked up her things, and walked out the door. Ava didn't go home right away. She walked, for hours, through quiet streets and noisy intersections, past cafes that hadn't opened yet, and bars where the last customers were just stumbling out. The morning was grey, the sky threatening rain, but she barely noticed. Everything inside her was louder than the world outside. She kept replaying it. The image of Harper in Noah's doorway. The easy way she'd spoken. The way Noah had looked back at her like he'd been caught between two timelines. Ava wasn't angry that he'd had a past. She wasn't naive. But something about the way it had hit her. How suddenly she'd felt like a placeholder in someone else's story. It stung deeper than she expected. And more than that, it scared her. Because she'd let herself want him. Really want him. And now she didn't know what was real. Tessa found her later, sitting on the back steps of her apartment building, hood up, coffee cold in her hands. "You look like hell," Tessa said gently, dropping down beside her. "Thanks." Tessa nudged her shoulder. "You want to talk about it? Or should I just sit here in solidarity and silently hate men with you?" Ava didn't answer at first. Then, his ex showed up. "Oh, at his place, this morning. Oh, she knew who I was. He didn't even get a chance to explain anything before I left." "Do you want to hear his side?" Ava blinked. "I don't know." "Because you don't care anymore?" "Because I care too much." Tessa let out a quiet breath. "Well, for what it's worth, the fact that you walked away instead of screaming means you're stronger than you think. But maybe, just maybe, you don't have to walk away forever." Ava didn't respond, but her grip on the coffee cup tightened. Noah didn't text that day. He didn't call. Ava waited, half hoping, half dreading. By evening, she was pacing her apartment, angry at herself for wanting anything from him, angry at him for letting her walk away. And then, finally, a message. "Can I see you?" She stared at it for a long time. Then she wrote back, "Meet me where we first met." The corner outside the cafe was quieter than usual. The street lights had just blinked on, casting golden halos onto the pavement. Ava stood there with her arms crossed, heart in her throat. Noah arrived 3 minutes later, out of breath, like he'd run the whole way. He stopped a few feet from her. "Ava." She held up a hand. "Just don't lie." "I won't." "Did you know she was coming?" "No. I hadn't seen Harper in months. She just showed up. She used to do that, disappear, and then come back like nothing happened." "And you let her in?" "I didn't invite her. I was just as surprised as you were." Ava looked down at the ground. She spoke like she still belonged there. "She used to, but not anymore." He stepped closer. "That part of my life ended long before you walked in. She just doesn't know how to let go." Ava's eyes flicked to his. "And you?" He didn't blink. "I let go a long time ago. I just didn't realize I hadn't said it out loud yet." Silence stretched between them. He reached into his coat pocket and pulled out a piece of folded paper. "I wrote this after you left." She hesitated, then took it, unfolded it. It wasn't a letter. It was lyrics. Simple. Honest. Quiet. About a girl who made the silence feel safe. About wanting to stay instead of disappear. About finding something real when he'd stopped looking. She read it twice before speaking. "Is this what you couldn't say?" He nodded. "I'm better with music than words." Ava looked up at him, heart aching in that way it does when it's deciding whether to risk breaking again. "I don't want to be another unfinished song." "You're not," he said. "You're the one I want to keep playing." And just like that, the weight in her chest shifted. Not gone, but different. She stepped closer until their hands almost touched. "I don't need grand gestures," she whispered. "I just need honesty and time." "I'll give you both," he said, without hesitation. She looked at him for a long moment, then took his hand. Their fingers fit the way they always had, without resistance, without confusion, like they'd always known how. Later that night, they sat on the rooftop of his building. The city lights blinked below them, the air cool and open. He played soft chords on his guitar while she leaned against his shoulder, eyes closed, lips curved into the faintest smile. No more questions, no more second-guessing. Just this, the music between them, and the kind of silence that finally felt like home.